Well, good morning to you. Don't we have a very, very special one here for you today? This is the Ask SelfRecruiter career advice blog, video blog. Today we're going to handle 10 very tough questions on interviews. Let me just share my screen here and we'll get ourselves started. There we go. Again, welcome. If you're not getting your job search questions answered, send them in. We have these Q&As all the time. You're invited to send in your Q&As through chat, and when they flow through and I can see them, I will include those. Also, you can send them in advance. Just send them to ask@selfrecruiter.com. That's ask@selfrecruiter.com. All the best ones are always included here. Now, if you haven't seen me before, John Crant, author, career coach, and speaker, resume and LinkedIn guru as well. So if your career brand is suffering from really the not having the right staging, lighting, everything, the accoutrements that go with that to really elevate your brand, you need to work with a professional that knows how to lift your brand. All of my services are over on my SelfRecruiter page, right under the services tab. Of course, if you need to talk before you know which one's right for you, just reach out, we'll set up a time. Now today, effective interviewing requires really focused answers. It requires a lot of preparation up front, and it's critical for you to secure that offer for your new job. There are so many interview questions, but today we're going to handle 10 of the toughest ones. By the way, I certainly have other videos out there. Check out my SelfRecruiter YouTube channel, and please do like, comment, share, subscribe, all that kind of fun stuff, whether you're joining me today on LinkedIn, Facebook, or over on YouTube itself. So let's get right into today. First question, tell me about your best and worst boss. So this is an interesting question, and it's a very good question. There's a great many things they can learn from this question. So you have to be both strategic and very careful while giving a thoughtful answer. So what are we looking for from the best boss or the worst boss? We're looking for how you interacted with your boss, and whatever the challenges were, how you see those as too tough to overcome, or how you handled them. All in how you package your answer. It could be a learning opportunity where you stepped in to fill the gap for a boss that didn't quite deliver the right framework. That's one angle. Or if they're an amazing boss, you could tell a story about how that person really mentored and grew both yourself and other team members. There's much that could be learned here, but keep in mind, every question you answer in interview should not just be a regurgitation. It's not 20 questions, 20 answers. It's answering only the questions you wished you were asked. And if you need to, even reframing the question. A way I might reframe this question, I might say, oh gosh, Jack, Jim, or Jill, that's such an interesting question. What I think you're probably also really getting at is how did I deal with those situations, and really what did I learn from them, or what was the outcome? And I have a couple interesting stories to share. And I share my stories. There's nothing wrong with that, but for every question, don't just regurgitate the answer. Think about what they're trying to learn, how you could showcase certain skills, how you could demonstrate through your answer that you're the one they exactly would like to hire. Let's take our next question here. Next question, what have you learned by failing on the job? Ouch. Now, if we're going to answer this properly, we're going to have to admit that we failed on the job, and yet we have to package that story as some sort of a success, even if that project derailed or escalated out of control. The budget, all those timelines and benchmarks that had to be met, those milestones somehow slipped. That can be a wonderful learning process that somehow informed the next time that type of challenge came to you. So let's not be afraid to fail. You cannot be amazing at anything you do without failure. Failure is how we learn. But it's about whether that failure broke your spirit or inspired you to find another avenue. So talking about failings, it's always really talking about the learning opportunity and what really blossomed from that. Tell these stories with as many specifics. Now, I'm giving you the general framework of the answer, but you need a lot of specificity in your answer, a lot of passion because the specificity and the passion, right, rolling off your tongue without having to overthink it, maybe because you practiced in advance, all of that is how they judge what is really the real story and what is not the real story. When it's organic to you, it just comes out with passion and detail. Make sure you write out your answers in advance and practice, practice, practice. Next question. Tell me about your worst experience with management. Very tough. You have to think strategically what you might like to convey by outlining a worst experience. Part of the trap here, either here or back with the worst or best boss, can really be this concept of, if they hear somehow the inner workings of how their department currently works, they're not going to hire you. If this was the worst experience ever, and oh my gosh, he's describing my department, we understand that it's not going to be great here either, and probably not going to be able to keep you the right length of time. So there's a lot of that can be discovered through this type of exploratory questioning. But you could also take every one of those things, and each of these are an opportunity to demonstrate how you are so optimistic about everything on your trajectory. Every time you're presented with lemons, somehow you're able to make lemonade. That is how the story of the answer must go. And you have to be the cheerleader of this answer and the positive side of it, not the commiseration of the, oh my gosh, I have to tell you this horror story. And then they imagine what you're going to say about them in your next interview after they hire you. So let's be careful there. Next question. Tell me about a time when you disagreed with your coworkers. So many times, probably. It depends on how driven we are toward excellence. As you'll see me say in a lot of the other lectures, unfortunately, about half of the workforce is only what I would qualify as mediocre, of only moderate quality, not very good, really showing up for the paycheck. If you'd like to not be that, all you have to do is be a little bit better than mediocre to be ahead of almost everybody. But if you simply put a little heart and soul into whatever you do, you'll naturally be the top 1, 2, 3%. So if you're driven to that type of excellence, occasionally, yes, you're going to disagree with coworkers in telling the story or giving the answer, because every answer has to be a packaged story that, of course, is told as if it's right off the cuff. It has to be true, by the way. Because you practice and prepare does not make anything nefarious about this. This is called preparation, just like you would do for a sales meeting if they're going to hire you as a sales manager or whatever it is that you're going to be hired for. Of course, you would prepare for those meetings. This is a demonstration that you are the right person that prepares in advance. So mostly when I would like to talk about disagreeing with a coworker, I would like to demonstrate a higher level vision of some sort. I would like to zero in not on the petty stuff. Oh my gosh, petty, petty, petty. You know, we have that all the time. We're human beings. You know, that's a layer of life. That is not really what they're talking about. And that would definitely not be the right answer to highlight. What you want to think about is some project that you collaborated on where maybe one of your coworkers or two of your coworkers had much more of a myopic view and didn't really get the big picture. And somehow with your wisdom, you could see a larger strategy, a larger plan, and a larger goal that could be reached to overcome whatever objective was there. That's the right type of story to talk about. And in the end, I hope I can tell the story of, you know, the thing I'm most proud of was being able to win over my coworkers once I shared my vision. And you know, the project was a success. There's exclamation point. Think about how you answer these questions. They will determine your future in your career. Next question. What do you dislike about your current or most recent job? Every one of these are a trap because they are the toughest questions. So again, we don't want to look like we're a sad sack that's never going to be happy. Oh, another unhappy coworker. If I hire this one, don't want to hire another unhappy person to mix to my somewhat unhappy team already. So I want people that are optimistic, energetic, look at problems as opportunities. So something I dislike about the current or most recent job is definitely something, to me, probably systemic, that I can see the solution for, that somehow because I didn't have the authority, responsibility, or in the framework, I couldn't affect that. But going forward, I see how to use that dislike to make better choices. Again, very similar to what we might have said on some earlier things, but think about how you're going to pull out a real story that happened to you. Now, when you do answer, it's really important that you just don't answer, but you set the stage, set the lighting, set the mood. And it might even start like this. Oh gosh, it's such an interesting question. Our team was focused on the most high profile projects across our organization. So you can imagine that the pressure, both for the quality and the time deliverables and staying within budget, oh my God, pressure across the board. And notice how I begin to answer the question and I set up the entire atmosphere, staging. You felt like you were living this challenge vicariously. That's the way to answer every question, because it's really like talking to a dear old friend you haven't seen in 5 years. You're just sharing pearls of wisdom. I know it's a lot of stress while you're doing it, but you're confidently sharing pearls of wisdom, because there's only 2 reasons I'm ever going to hire you, assuming I think you're right for this job. I talk a lot about this in my interview intervention lecture, so be sure to check that one out. It's all the secrets to really change the equation so that they pick you rather than the competitor. But we have to think about how we position ourselves. We have to think about how we elevate ourselves and how people make choices. So if you're capable and qualified, you don't have to have held the job before, but if I believe you're capable and qualified, it always comes down to number one is chemistry above all other things. And even through my answers here, you realize I can build camaraderie, teamwork, empathy, even for my coworkers, and the challenge simply on how I answer that question. So think about how you're going to be seen as the very best, wisest choice to add to the team based on how you answer these questions and how you set that story stage. So let's think about what we dislike, and it's an opportunity to see a solution others didn't see. Next question, why do you think you're better than the other candidates I'll see? Now, I like this question. I often talk in my various SelfRecruiter lectures about why is it going to be the very best business decision I make today if I choose to hire you. It's very, very similar to this. And you get the concept here. It's a throwing down the gauntlet. Really, the question is, if you had to make the case to me just right now, why you over all others, here's your chance. Step up to the microphone and tell me. And so the only trap here is you have to balance ego and arrogance. I have to have a lot of confidence in you, and yet I can't think that your ego and arrogance is so close to that line that I'm going to lose my lunch and I can't handle this person. So think about how you're going to tell that story. You go, gosh, that's an interesting question, because I got to walk a little bit of a tightrope. That's an interesting question. What I think you're really getting at is really what is special about me that is not as special about other people. What can't they bring to the table? And so I would, on that point, go right for the jugular. You may be missing 2 or 3 key things on their list, or they have this whole list of things they'd like. You're missing 2 or 3 key things there. I'm imagining you didn't go after this job unless you thought those were not a big deal for you to overcome. I can do this job. So I have to really put those concerns aside, not focus on those, but I have to focus on what I bring to the table, and then focus additionally on something that I bring that is going to be separate or different. Could be perspective, could be an actual skill. It could be who I've networked with in the past, the understanding the mind of your customer. There's so many ways that you could be better than any competitor. You're going to have to think about how you throw that competitor right under the front tire of that bus. So gauntlet question, you have to prepare for it. It's a tough one. Why are you the best of the best? Now, what happened during the gap on your resume? I told you these are tough questions. I mean, in fact, if I was interviewing you, I'd probably look for that and I'd go, so Jack, Jim, Jill, what happened during the gap on your resume? And I'd say it just like that, because it's theater to some degree. You have to understand, on both sides in an interview process, there's a little bit of a theater. They try to amp up the pressure, like, oh, I had an epiphany just now. There's a gap here. And I have to make you experience, oh, you have to experience all of that unhappiness in the sound. really to push you towards something called a confessional moment. I grew up Catholic. I know all about those confessional moments. This is not confessional. This is a sales meeting. That's what an interview is. In all cases, even though it seems like an interrogation, it's a sales meeting and you are in charge. That doesn't mean you can be a bull in a china shop, wreaking havoc. No. In fact, why don't you make them feel in charge, but you be in charge with a little bit of puppet mastery in conversation, how you engage them. So in terms of the gap on your resume, if there is a gap on your resume, I recommend closing that gap. Now, in my resume renovation lecture, which will teach you all the secrets to really create a winning resume, first thing is to understand that no one will read any longer. So if no one reads any longer, why would we put a sentence on a resume in a world where people don't read? Need to distill down to concept communication. Once you have a gap on the resume, and by gap, I'm talking longer than a few months. It has to be a year or two where there's really no gap. In fact, if it's not longer than a number of months, which could even have crossed 2 years, you realize all you have to do is remove all the months off your resume and there's no gap. So what we're really talking here is a 1 to 2 year gap or even longer. I had one of my clients that had a 12-year gap right back to work on Wall Street once they explained what they were doing for 12 years. Nope. Wasn't sitting home with my feet up having bonbons for 12 years. I was deeply involved in all these other things which they illustrated, and they stepped right back into their career because the person had confidence in them. Chemistry and confidence. Chemistry number 1, confidence number 2. Gap in your resume. If we're literally fixing it on the resume, it's simply sabbatical and dates. And the dates have to come to an end, of course, even if it's current. It has to have come to an end, so it's past, even though I'm still looking for a job. So sabbatical, no explanation. And when they go, oh, I had a sabbatical, which is the same thing as, hey, what happened during the gap on your resume? I have to say, as you look at my background, I had such a great career run across so many amazing brands. I had not had a career break in so long. So when XYZ came to an end and, they had some reorganizations and companies get into all sorts of trouble like that all the time, I found an opportunity to take a package and to take some time off and really work on all those projects that build up at home and everything else. And all of that's really wonderful, but I am so ready to get my career back on track. And that's what really excited me about this opportunity and the need I see here and how I can contribute. Always back to them like a date. The reason they're asking you about the gap is they want to know if you've got some problem they need to know about. And they also want to know if you have any leftover damage from that gap. That's the whole point of asking you the whole gap piece. Again, optimistic, energetic, unstoppable. That's a person I'd like to hire. What can you do for us that someone else can't? Well, that's another one of the gauntlet questions, but you have to prepare for these. Most people, if they were presented with something this harsh, probably wouldn't give the best answer because they'd worry about the tone, the sound, everything else. Well, write out all of these answers in advance. Practice them out loud until you get that tone and everything really just right. As I get a little sip of my second coffee of the day, although it is a double espresso for the second time. So here, again, the danger is about not sounding overly egotistical or arrogant to a level where they just can't stomach you and they can't hire you. But let's not get confused. No matter what job we're going after, the hiring individual would actually like us dangerously close to the ego and arrogance line, dangerously close to the line. If we cross that line, they're never going to hire us. So I can't work with that person, can't stomach them. But if you get dangerously close to that line without crossing it, then they get inspired. Oh my gosh, I don't even know what this person is going to do for me yet, but I know they're going to deliver something just that these ordinary people are not going to deliver. I can see that just in the sense of the conversation. So come up with something interesting here. It could be even Jack, Jim, or Jill. I mean, the biggest thing that I can do for you that others will not is the perspective that I bring. When I look at most of the people that might go after a job like this, they're from your direct competitors. They've been in this role for X amount of time. And when you look at most of their backgrounds, they don't bring the diversity of experience that would make them top of their game in this role. Oh, I'm sure they've learned how to do it that one way, that their organization does it, but really expertise requires diversity of experience. And that diversity of experience is something that gives me a perspective that others just won't have. And I think it's going to be the most valuable asset once I'm on your team. Notice that I'm already now projecting myself into the role once I'm on your team. Not if I join your team, well, I'll think about whether you join my team. No, confidence. No, once I'm on your team, this is part of what I'll naturally deliver. Sounds like we should hire that person. Next question, how do you handle and manage stress? Oh my gosh, lots of opportunity here. Don't just think about the conflict or what happened at work or everything else. Did I say anything about work? I didn't actually say anything about work. How we handle and manage stress is a life tool, a life skill that we have to think about. So that may touch on other areas of life that are outside work that also make you an amazing candidate. A few years back, I was finishing a resume and LinkedIn profile for one of my clients. Not a secret that I work with clients and I reinvent their career stories in an amazing way. But as we're getting toward the end of the process, this person, this was like the end of October, and they suddenly go to me, oh, I'm about to be a 4-time marathon runner next week. I'm like, well, what? You're about to be a 4-time marathon runner? And this is the first time I'm hearing about it? That doesn't have anything to do with my work. It doesn't. Seem like you're getting a little mature to me. What does a 4-time marathon runner communicate? Energy, drive, ambition, unstoppable. Probably really good on my healthcare costs. I've been party to all those conversations behind the scenes. They talk about it all, no matter what they claim. So you want to think about how you might answer this question and go, it's so interesting. Of course, in my overall life, I handle and manage stress through proper exercise and rest and even meditation. Being balanced and available in my work life because everything is in alignment is a big difference. And part of what I do, I personally am between 8 and 11 miles per day, every day of the year. That's part of how I manage my stress level, how I keep myself centered, keep all the negative parts away and the positive energies with me. And when I'm in my work life, that naturally follows in. When you come into your work life with that kind of a centered, balanced life, you then understand how to disarm and diffuse situations while you think about different perspectives that could give a better solution or combined solution, wherever you're going to go with that answer. You want to think about what you're going to say, but it's a great way to demonstrate that you can handle stress, and you're even handling stress right in the middle of the answer if you handle it well. Another great demonstration of what I can expect if I hire you. How are you going to be when you're on my team? Next question, what else should I know about you? And this actually may be the last question we're going to find out here. What else should I know about you? Well, if I didn't tell you I'm a 4-time marathon runner, I am not. But and if that's my background, my gosh, Well, I think one of the things we haven't talked about, Jack, Jim, or Jill, is maybe what makes me so special in my work life is also what I do in my non-work life. From an activity level, I'm between 8 and 11 miles per day, every day of the year. By the way, that's the average. That kind of focus on life helps diffuse everything, but also makes you very available in your work life and focused in your work life. And, that's something I bring to the table. Separately, when you look at my entire background, I think one thing you'll see is I am driven by excellence. And I'm one of those individuals that is rarely satisfied with whatever it is I'm working on. I'm rarely satisfied until the absolute last moment, because really until the absolute last moment, that represents opportunity for improvement. And I'm a continual improvement individual right to the last moment to produce the very best results. That's one thing you should take away from this meeting. What else can I answer for you? And then flip it back to them, see what else they might need. And did we get to the end of our questions? Oh my gosh, we did. Those are our 10 tough questions for your interviews. Now, there are so many questions for interviews, so I hope that you work down a laundry list of questions. The big secret list of questions is right on your very effective resume. Now, you may or may not have a very effective resume. What I teach in my resume renovation lecture is to distill that conversation down to really absorbable content, not with sentence structure. And when you change it over to absorbable content, you realize it's so available to the interviewer. Whatever resonates with the challenge they're trying to solve, they see that bullet point and they go, oh, tell me about that. That's always the question, by the way, from your resume. Oh, tell me about that. Oh, that was an interesting project. When the CEO picked up the phone to call me, did you see how I started that story? Now, it has to be true, by the way, but that's a great illustration of, I pull that detail out of my clients all the time. I'm like, well, let's tell the story that way. When they put them in your shoes, looking out of your eyes back in that moment. So the real work here is to write out every question for every bullet on your resume. If your resume does not serve up the questions, check out my resume renovation lecture. If you need more help, all my services are over under my SelfRecruiter services tab on the website. But thank you guys for joining in. Think about what questions you have for your job search. Small changes change everything. So if you're not getting your questions answered, take control and send in your questions. Just send them in to ask@selfrecruiter.com. That's ask@selfrecruiter.com. And really, we'll get all those answers for you here. Don't let somebody else think for yourself, even though you're getting advice. So absorb this advice, parse which points are the value points for your challenges, and then practice until you own it. Thank you guys for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. Check out everything over on my SelfRecruiter YouTube channel, also on my Facebook page, and of course on my LinkedIn page. And thank you guys for tuning in today. And we will see you very soon. Oh, and thank you, Ed Stone. Great to see you as well. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you very soon. Whole series launching next month. So check out my SelfRecruiter calendar page. You have all my dates for the entire series coming up. And if you need help, reach out at any time. Take care.